Welcome to Curito Connects. I'm your host, Jenn, and I've been conversing with friends around the world about life challenges and impactful moments. Conversations on this platform look at answering the questions, how we overcome challenges and how our experiences shape who we are and the work we do today. I hope this work can inspire you on your own personal and individual journey. Let's dive right in. Hello, my guest today is Cristina Holopainen, founder of a modern yoga studio, Urban Ashram in the Philippines, as well as Maruia, an award-winning retreat center in New Zealand. Hi, Cristina.
Hi, Jen. How are you?
Good. So glad I'm able to catch you with our time zone difference as well. So funny story about
Yes.
Cristina and I actually visited Urban Ashram in Manila many times back in 2017 to about 2019. I had even flown down there for weekend workshops even before hearing about Cristina. I didn't know much about her until I met Joan, who was on our earlier episode. And through these connections, we finally got to meet each other virtually. I'm a big fan of Cristina and what she built in Manila with Urban Ashram because the yoga scene in Taiwan and the Philippines are pretty similar. And though we haven't met in person, I'm sure once travel resumes to normalcy, I will get to visit Cristina in her retreat center in New Zealand. I really look forward to that. If you haven't figured it out already, Cristina has lived a very exciting life, from corporate to yoga to now running a retreat center. There's so many things every time she talks about it. It's always very inspiring. So I want to ask Cristina, what has been some of the most challenging, impactful, or significant event that has happened already thus far in your lifetime? And condolences. I know your mom had passed away recently this year,
Yes.
which for many
Yes.
people, losing a parent is always a big deal. I lost my dad in 2009. So yeah, I'll just leave the mic for you to share, Cristina.
Jen, thank you. Thanks for putting this podcast together. I think the wonderful thing about the practice of yoga is that you find people around the world that share a connection one way or the other. And it was so interesting to know that you did visit Urban Ashram at the time when I actually left Urban Ashram. So, and yet now I think we've connected more so than we would have ever had if I was physically in the studio. So thank you for constantly finding ways to connect. And that's wonderful. Um, yeah, so I would like to think that I have lived a so far enriching life. I think that's probably a good way to look at it. Enriching doesn't mean that it's wealth in the traditional ways, but certainly in terms of experiences and people I've met. I'd like to think that I've had a pretty good run. This month, August, is the anniversary month of Urban Ashram. It's the 10th year, so we are a decade old. So that really is a celebration of a community practicing yoga together, which is a big, big, big celebration. And I think for me that having met all the people that I've met through the practice has really, really enriched my life. So that's one big impactful thing was that I came to the mat to practice yoga that wanted me to learn more yoga and study yoga. So I took the teacher training with Joan in 2010, YogaWorks teacher training. After that, me and my classmates decided that we want to put up a yoga studio because we wanted to teach people because this was the best thing that's ever happened to us. And so we committed to that and we continue to be a college of teachers. So, yes, yoga is a big thing. And that was perhaps the most impactful thing that's ever happened to my life and my career. Um, Other than that, I big impacts in my life probably were the move to New Zealand. Having lived in the Philippines and a few other countries, but mostly in the Philippines with my family for 46 years of my life, or maybe 40 years and six of those overseas. Um, Really moving from comfortable family, collective society where you have a strong support system into the independent first world of New Zealand, where you have to learn all over again. So that was a big, big move in terms of just reconditioning your mind and repurposing your energy and relearning, which is a big thing. Learning consumes so much energy, how much brain cells you fire up, how much of your body needs to move differently, how everybody changes at the same time. So there's so many moving parts. So that was a big and immensely challenging and still immensely challenging change, because that's 46 years of habits all of a sudden shaken and needed to be changed. And then you add the pandemic. You add this extreme stress surrounding your environment. So yeah, so that's pretty much been the two most recent impactful and challenging events of my life.
Can I ask, at what point did you guys, as a family, you and your husband and kids, decide to pick up and leave the Philippines to, buy a retreat center, or like, and set up shop in New Zealand? That's like you said earlier, that's a very big decision, and leaving comfort,
Uh,
leaving almost like leaving the nest.
yeah, no, no, and I understand. A lot of people questioned our decision then. Why would we leave such a comfortable life? I think for a number of reasons. Individually, when we look at our own personal individual development, um, I think my husband was being stunted by the inability to explore his interests in the Philippines. He was into paramotoring and paragliding and parasailing, so he was more into adventure sports. So he spent a lot of his time in Europe and in Australia. So he was studying a lot overseas. So he was overseas a lot, pursuing his own personal interests. I was running the studio and running the household, and I also had a corporate gifting business. So I had a 19-year-old business that I was running, and at the same time running the yoga studio and with the young children. So I was pretty much preoccupied. But when I look at how we were living, we were just always constantly holed into the house. We were building our own bubble just organically. We would go out less because there would be more traffic. We would invite people more to our house because it was difficult to get to somebody's house. So we would always host so that people would want to come. So we were starting to just really live indoors. And then through your travels, you realize that there's life out there. So I think um, when we had come from New Zealand for the first time in Auckland, not first time in New Zealand, but we had gone to New Zealand several times to go skiing in Queenstown. We went to Auckland in June 2016 to visit a friend who, by the way, designed the Urban Ashram logo. He was Josh was a skate a longboard skateboarding friend of Lasse, who obviously was 40 years old when when he was 16, who designed the Urban Ashram logo. Yeah, had moved to Auckland and had shown us around Auckland. And at that point, I think both of us realized that, you know what, we could imagine a life here. And so we did. We went on the first year. It was a student visa. We came as students. All four of us came as students. I went back to university to study marketing, which was now called brand communications. So I went back to school. I went back to college. Lasse went to pilot school. He became a private pilot. He learned how to fly a plane in 16 months. And my two children perfectly moved into the new year, new school year. So Monica had moved into middle school, and Wyatt had just entered junior school. So I think from a developmental point of view and from an energy level point of view, we were at the right time to have made that shift. So yeah, I think it worked out, and I think that awareness to know that you can do it and realistically say that, all right, let's give it a year, gave us enough of of a resolve to go.
Right. Oh, That's really cool. And now home is in New Zealand.
Yes, home is in New Zealand. Yes.
Okay, so sorry, I kind of like diverted that, but now we can go back to you were kind of laying out the different challenges, and so we came from yoga journey with Urban Ashram to moving to New Zealand, and then you were gonna add on to that.
Yes, yes. So, well, a number of life events had happened also that brought me to the yoga practice, and I think the reason I talk about yoga now because it's a marker. They were marker milestones in my life where what was consistent was my yoga practice. So, my back pain, a lot of my self imagery and self esteem was really about my self image through the body, and that was because I had scoliosis. So I developed scoliosis, and I had back pains, and that's how I got into the practice of yoga. And I had my husband who was also suffering from chronic back pain due to stress, and later on found out to be a spinal injury, which caused him to have spinal surgery. And then heal through the yoga practice. Um, Also alerted us to really take care of our health. So there was a health scare from a pain perspective. At the same time, I believed in the practice because it helped me through my pregnancies. And one of the most difficult pregnancies I had was um, 12 years ago. I had a daughter in my womb on the 21st week who was diagnosed with Edwards syndrome. So that's trisomy 18. So in 2008, or maybe what it even was 2009 because she was born in 2008 and she was born in 2009. Um, from the beginning of the pregnancy, from the 21st, she was already diagnosed, and that would mean that the chances of her surviving is 50% in the womb and 50% as a vegetable outside the womb up to 13 years old. So it's a third strain. So you have three, chromosomes have two, right? And X and Y. And so hers is she has three on the 18th chromosome. And that means that every single cell in her body is not functioning properly. But the wonderful thing was because I was so deeply into my yoga practice, and through my previous pregnancy, through yoga, I had learned that the only thing I can control is the womb, the vibration she feels, the love she feels, to create the body that I have to carry the child in its healthiest condition in the hope that I can deliver her in the healthiest possible way into the world. And so that's all I expected, was to carry her through and take it from there. And that really takes a lot of acceptance, a lot of wanting to understand and learn despite the overwhelming outcome that will be negative. And so it really was a true practice, from the prenatal that I learned through birthlight. So there was quite a lot of understanding as to what you can do. So it was good. It was a very, very good. It turned out to be a positive experience in the end, despite the conditions set out. So she lived. She lived up to 5.5 months um, after birth, and she had passed on the afternoon after I had found out in that morning of the same day that I was pregnant with my son Wyatt. So she had passed on the same day that I was given the news that I was pregnant with my son. So that was, I think, a very, what could have been a tragic milestone in my life, but I've been blessed to have had to um, go through that in the most positive way possible.
Thanks for sharing that. But and that is so deep because you, I can't imagine that feeling of that day where you found out you were pregnant and Olivia passing. Just that life and rebirth happening all at the same time for you. I actually wanted to also ask, during that time of your pregnancy, was there support for you in terms of understanding what Edwards syndrome was in the Philippines at the time? How did you get your resources and looking into what this disease is in terms of the whole pregnancy and after you gave birth to Olivia for that 5 months of having to care for an infant with Edwards syndrome?
Yeah, well, I think we were born at a time where there's so much information that you can find if you choose your sources well. And so it's really a mix of what you read and you educate yourself and versus anecdotal evidence, because you end up finding that a lot of mothers have gone through this because you meet them, you go through, so when you find out, you go through every week or every month being poked, of being checked again. You check the status of the baby, so you're constantly being pried upon. The pregnancy is not usually normal. It's a genetic fluke, so it happens in 1 in every 3 million. So we went through genetic tests. Since we don't have it in our genetic lineup, it's really a fluke. It was just a genetic mishap. um, and so, yeah, so you go through that, you meet people, you educate yourself, and that's why really seek I really sought the scientific understanding of everything, because it helped to be very, very knowledgeable with science, and yet have the intuition of your own self-awareness and your understanding of yourself. That's a really strong combination for preparing for a potential tragedy and trauma, and also preparing to heal knowing you have to. So, resources, definitely you work with the doctors, you work with other mothers who've been through it. You be honest with your family when you're not feeling okay, and you allow people to support you. You say no when you don't want support. You become very, very honest with how to deal with it on a day-to-day basis, because every day is different. You really don't know, and it's in you. So yeah, so it was a very self-aware process to go through motherhood in a very studied way. But at the same time, you also recognize the strength of humanity, the strength of the woman to carry a child till the end, the strength of the woman to heal and bear another child, and give birth once more and relive life, the support of the family who just comes together with no question, with just absolute support. And so it's a fascinating, I guess you only see that when difficult situations arise. You see everybody come together,
Yeah.
and then you see yourself, stronger and also weak, and be okay with it, you know yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. But of course, there are situations where people maybe are not as fortunate to have that support, or when they enter a difficult period, that they don't have that, right? Because it's kind of like there's always two sides to the coin sometimes.
Yes, yes, but you have to seek it also. If you don't get it, you ask for it. You know what I mean?
You have to go find it. Yeah,
Sometimes,
yeah,
yeah,
totally.
because sometimes people think you can do it on your own, and sometimes they, you know what I mean, so they're
Right.
also careful. So sometimes they just need to be told that you need help.
Because the transition between Olivia and Wyatt was so close, do you feel like you didn't really have time to grieve over Olivia the way some mothers would have, because you went right into another 9 months of carrying Wyatt, and then Wyatt was born, and you were also running your businesses at the time, and it's just one thing after the other. You just keep going, going, going. Um, in terms of like when you look back, I guess, when you think about it.
Yeah, well, you only realize, I suppose, the effect of grief later on when it resurfaces, if it resurfaces. So I haven't really felt unnecessary, sad, distraught anguish grieving on Olivia. I think it's because we celebrated her life every week she was alive. You know what I mean? So a
Yeah.
conditioning. It was a conditioning. It's like trauma. Um, you condition. You, if you feel the pain and the suffering and you let it simmer in your body, it's gonna imprint. And the reason it imprints is because it's a strong emotion. But I think from our perspective is what we were very mindful of the effect of trauma into our psyche, that we chose, regardless how difficult the situation was, to choose joy. Even in the hardest, of course, you give in to sadness and you give in. And that's, in a way, the grieving had already started from the day we found out that she wasn't going to live. Do you understand that? So that's you're already preparing to grieve. You're grieving technically, in a way. So I
Right.
think for me, it didn't really, the grief didn't resurface. But when my mom died, Olivia showed up in many ways, in many, many, many significant, undeniable ways. Her presence was very felt. And that's when I realized also that perhaps my mother didn't really grieve either with Olivia's passing, because she had
Mm.
a grandchild and she had to deal with her daughter who was bringing new life into the world. So, as a mother, you want to be strong for your daughter and you want to be joyful for your new grandchild. So, that entire connection resurfaces. But it doesn't mean you haven't grieved for the first child you've lost. It probably just means that it's all connected. The mother, the
Yeah.
daughter, and
The
and and,
grandmother.
and yeah, exactly. So yeah, so I suppose in a way that it it comes back at certain, I mean, if you really really think about it, time is so limiting, even as a concept, so I just grieved in a different time.
Wow, I feel like we kind of like need to take a moment here to just let everything sink in a little bit.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's yeah, it's yeah,
Yeah.
but still, I mean, it's yeah, it is what it is.
But I guess in terms of the work you've been doing thus far, um, has I mean, this obviously holds a special place in your heart in terms of other mothers who are dealing with Edwards syndrome, infants with Edwards syndrome. Um, are there more awareness in terms of your advocacy for that, or helping other groups in those areas? Or yeah, I guess I'm just curious if this is something that you have been actively helping other mothers or sharing, or in terms of the yoga practices that and the classes that you have offered at Urban Ashram. I know you guys have a great prenatal postnatal program with JP as well.
Yes. um I think, what I always separate the vision of Urban Ashram, because it's a college of teachers, from my personal life, and my personal life is my professional teaching life. So I am a teacher in the College of Teachers at Urban Ashram. So my contribution as a teacher is based on, obviously, my personal interest and my professional interest. And what I've found is that, um, the platform that Urban Ashram has created is really a platform to begin your exploration of yourself. And there will always be something there for you at any point in your life. Because that's what happened to me. You know what I mean? At every single milestone of my life, there was a yoga practice available for me. And it was through Urban Ashram. Be it a teacher showed up because she taught prenatal yoga and postnatal, but in the evenings, she spent time with my husband teaching him subtle body yoga to heal his spine. That's an intersection. So, or to meet someone like Joan who makes you feel empowered in your body and makes you understand that it does require a dedicated practice. To remind you constantly that to get to this level of potential, you have to put in the work. And so in a way, my experience, may it be unique and seemingly highly challenging, it's everybody's got their own share of highly challenging, intense experience that is fundamentally, ultimately personal. Like mine is not better or worse than anybody else, it's mine. And I'm fully self aware of what my life has presented itself to me and how I see it. It's in the same breath that other people see that about their lives. But what I've found is that in through yoga, and that's what we are hoping that Urban Ashram does, is to provide you that venue you can seek some form of solace, some form of quiet, some form of refuge, where you can be okay with yourself, by yourself, and yet guided by people who actually genuinely care about you. That's why they zoom into the screen and look at you and adjust you. that's why they that's why they study so hard to make sure they don't put you in a worse position than you were beginning of the class. There's so much thoughtful intention, and I think that's possibly why it's still there 10 years later. you know and that's what makes it very interesting, that everyone's personal experience, be it
Yeah,
shared or not, is shared through their classes.
right. And so, would you say that's the same mindset you have with creating Maruia?
Maruya is a whole different animal. I think there's this entire wonderful part, wonderful different part, because it's a different. I mean, we're seeing people face to face, so it's a very different human interface, and this is really a nature um, connection. So it's different. It's what we used to do in the Philippines when we had our property in Baler, which was a surf eco resort, where it was off grid, where you are really truly left to respond and be comfortable in nature by not harming it. So Maruia River Retreat allows you that. You get to learn yoga, you get to eat good food, you get to do guided nature walks, you get to sleep in a very very nice villa, um, where you're transported into the wilderness, and yet you have the comforts of being in a retreat center. So it's a very very different experience, but fundamentally the yoga vision, the yoga ethos is still the same. The idea is to allow you to
Right.
experience the practice as guided, safely, and progressively as possible. So same fundamental ways of teaching, but in a different setting. And that's what that's what good education
Mm-hmm.
does. When you're trained well, you can transport your skill anywhere you are, regardless of the environment you're in. So whether you're teaching online, you're teaching in studio, you're teaching in the park, or you're teaching a retreat, if you've got the right education, you can definitely morph and share the practice much more effectively.
Yeah, you can apply it anywhere.
Yeah, 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 and it becomes interesting for you. You have a skill set. I had just so the other marker was I had finished my 500 hours with Annie Carpenter after 10 years. So it took 10 years to
Congratulations.
I know I among all the things that I've graduated on, this was the most, like, I wanted to really jump for joy and do, you know do cartwheels because it was
I hope you
hard.
I hope you did it. I hope you did it.
It was hard. Yeah. Well, it's hard earned. You know what I mean? It was a hard earned one, but it was so well worth it. To study with the same teachers for 10 years, to go through them, and for them to know you for 10 years and see you grow. That puts pressure on you too, by the way. You know what I mean? Because they've known you. So that's good, because then that's a
they they know where all your weak spots
right,
are.
right. So yeah. And it you can't bullshit. So, and you shouldn't. So so that's another big milestone. Initially a challenge, but evidently a milestone.
That's so exciting.
Yeah.
So before we wrap up,
Hmm.
I wanted to see if you have any words of wisdom that you would share with our listeners, regardless of, whether they resonate with, like you said, your unique personal storyline, um, or not, but just in terms of, encountering different milestone challenges, significant, impactful moments and periods in their lifetime, and every few years we're always going to hit something, but how do we approach it, and how do we come in with it with a, positive mindset, or have, like you said earlier, having the right community around you to support you when you need it, being able to be vulnerable. What would you tell others?
The first thing is practice yoga. Get yourself on the mat. The first thing. I mean, I used to dilly dally about that, like make it the fifth thing you tell them to do. But there's too much proof that it's the one good thing that you can do forever and enjoy it. You know what I mean? And so number one is practice yoga. The second one is really be kind to yourself. Like really, 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 and that means not just saying making excuses for yourself, but being so kind that you're actually willing to take a look at your flaws. That looking at those flaws as something that is not wrong with you, but something you can quickly address. It's just a change of attitude. It's probably not even as serious as you thought it was, but you never looked at it. So, really being kind to yourself, because once you practice yoga, you become so self aware that you're gonna start seeing things that you never saw. And a lot of it is frightening, a lot of it is confronting. But that's exactly what is liberating, because the fact that you see it, the fact that it's just you seeing it, nobody else, means it can go away and can change. So I think, for me, if you ask me, those are the only two things that, if you wanted to really do, is practice yoga and really be kind to yourself. And that's a lot. That's a lot already.
Yeah, that's a lot. Yeah. The one step at a time, baby steps. I think I told Joan that only just recently this year have been able to be better at daily practice. And that took a long time to get to the fact where I'm like, yeah, it doesn't feel right if I didn't get on my mat today. That took a long time. So, yes. And that was only step one.
that's,
Okay.
that's only step one. Yeah. So
That's only
yeah,
step
Jen,
one. And I'm
you.
working on
I
step
wish it was
two that you
something
just
more
mentioned.
complicated. Right? I wish it was something more complicated, like journal every night, or read this book, or take a pill. No, no, it's not. It's get yourself on the mat. That's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
totally. I will add all the links, so people can follow you and sign up for classes on Urban. We will have a discount code as well, so that will all be on
yes,
the
for sure.
website, and follow on Instagram, social media, etc. And for now, I just really want to thank you for sharing all of that with us today, and we will definitely we will come out again coordinating something together, or maybe down the line we'll have another podcast episode sharing something different. So we'll just wrap up here, and I just wanted to again thank you so much for your time, Cristina.
Thank you, Jenn, and it's really, really, really nice to connect with you. I mean, in many ways, other outside of this. So I will see you in Joan's class again. We'll be
Yes,
classmates again.
online for now until we can all travel again.
It's the next best thing. Seriously, it really is the next best thing. Okay, thank you. All right, take care.
That's all we have time for today. Thank you for listening to Curito Connects. For more Connects content, collaborations, and discoveries set to inspire you on your own individual journey, please head to our website at www.curito.co. Until next time, stay inspired, and thank you for joining us at Curito Connects.